Okay, so I would like to thank and welcome Mr. Marcheggiani here. He will be our expert on the landscape protection, our issue that we have studied. So, Caterina, can I have this one?
Thank you for inviting me. Welcome,
you.
guys.
So this is our project, Citizens in Action. It's an Erasmus project, Jean Monnet, co-founded by the European Union. And this is our logo and our motto, Young People United for Europe. So the aim of this project is to strengthen the sense of belonging to the European community and to become active citizens through various activities. Last year, we have studied several issues, the landscape protection, the gender issue, and Europe and European citizenship. So after this year of formation, we have experienced what it means to be an active citizen through interviews to our citizens, and we have gathered the questions to bring here to Brussels. So this trip is the core of our project. We are here to receive answers from you, from the experts in these European institutions. And next year, we will disseminate this experience and the answers we have received. So we are from 4 countries. We are 5 schools. Liceo Artistico Mannucci from Ancona is the leading school, and the team is called Color Community. We have Liceo Vittoria Colonna from Rome, and its team Vittoria Colonna for Europe. We have Constantina Manesis High School from Greece, and it's the Manesakia team. And then we have from Romania, Scuola Gimnasiala number 1. They're called the Little Ones. And we have the Latvian Riga State Gymnasium number 3. And the team is Passionate Oak, our wonderful partnership. So I leave the word to Katja to present this booklet that we have created.
Thank you, Greta, so much. I would like to thank you all for all the job that we did together. The Citizens in Action, Let's Give Voice to Citizens, aim is to show the result of the activities of active citizenship carried out in the frame of the project on Europe, landscape, protection and gender equality. So it has 2 sections. The first one are the results of the interviews on Europe and European citizenship, landscape protection and gender issues per country. And the second one has the questions from the citizens on Europe, landscape protection and gender issues too. So, how was Let's Give Voice Citizens created? With so many work, first of all, from the kids and their teachers. And after that, each student interviewed 2 adults and 2 students asking questions on Europe and European citizenship, landscape protections, and gender issues. After that, we have the results, which were calculated for each country, and in total, of course. The next step was to each delegation collected 1 to 2 questions from citizens of their territory for each key area related to the topic, and finally the questions were summarized.
Okay, so this is our project, and now we are going to present the results of the questionnaire, and then we are going to ask the questions. Okay, so I leave the word to Matilde for the first graph.
This is the first graph. The question is the urban landscape an asset in your country? So we can see that almost every country agrees. Greek with 62.5%. Italy with 84% and Latvia with almost 59%, and Romania said that doesn't agree, with 50% said no.
The second question is, in your opinion, are the surroundings of the place where you live kept clean and well maintained? And we can see that in Greece, the 78.8% said yes, and the 21.3% said no. In Italy, the 38% said yes, and 58.75% said no, and 3.25% said I don't know. In Latvia, 61.25% said yes, 33.75% said no, and 5% said I don't know. And in Romania, 25% said yes, 70% said no, and 10%.
In the third question, do you feel you have a responsibility to preserve, protect, and improve urban and natural landscape? All the Greeks actually said yes. 89% of the Italians said yes, with 8% no and 3.25% I don't know. Then we have Latvia with the most negative answers, with almost 13% no, 83% yes, and 5% I don't know. And lastly, we have Romania with 84% yes, 6.25% no, and 10% I don't know.
The fourth question was, do you think the government should put resources on landscape? Greece answered 100% yes, while Italy answered 95% yes and 1.25% no, and 3.75% I don't know. To the question, do you think the government should put resources on landscape? Latvia answered 80% no, 12.5% no, and 7.5% I don't know. While Romania answered 92.5% yes, 3.75% no, and 7.5% I don't know.
Last question. Do you know at least 2 examples of landscapes protected by UNESCO in your country? As you can see, the most people answered yes. For example, is Italy with 73%, Latvia with 50%, Romania with 48%, Greece with 45%. For the answer for no are around 20 and 14%. The answer for I don't know it's Greece with 21%, Italy and Latvia with 7%, and Romania with 5%. Thank you.
Thank you. I invite here the students who are reading the questions for landscape.
The girl I like.
Yes, she is very passionate about landscape, so that's why. Okay, Joy, when you're ready.
Okay, so I'm saying the first question. What more can EU do to protect national historical heritage and help the renovation of historical monuments in order to increase cultural interaction between European countries?
Okay, I suppose the question is to me. Okay. Above all, thank you for inviting me. I was looking at the slide, which I saw 4 European countries crossing as a transect whole Europe, where you have asked questions. This is a sensible product that, on the scientific perspective, has a value. So I will ask you, if I can use and your material, and you have done a great job. And thank you for your colleagues who was presenting the graph. I take the occasion of the first question for making a general, what we in Italian, I'm former Italian, I'm close from the city of Ancona, what we call a cappello introduttivo, a general frame, an umbrella, an idea umbrella. You speak about landscape. You have been exposed to training from a colleague of mine, Professor Alici, speaking about the landscape, the heritage, and in your first question, what you have here, you have something which puts together European Union and the protection of something which is nice or old. Old or nice, because if it's nice as a value, if it's old as a value. But we have to take a step back and think what landscape is. Because in that meaning, we have the mother of the issue, why Europe is sometimes ineffective in protecting landscape. You are from 4 different countries. Any of you has his own meaning for landscape. We are using English. Our colleague before, Klaus, has well introduced the problem of Europe. We are not speaking the same language as other geopolitical blocs, as Russia, China, United States. We have more than one language. And the problem of language is not only a problem of translating words, it's a problem of meanings. What I mean in Italian when I say paesaggio, what a colleague of mine says and think about when he says paysage, and what about Klaus when he speaks about Landschaft, or the British term landscape. Different words, different meanings, different perspective, different evolution of the pieces of law was generated what the countries are today. That's a big issue for landscape. Sorry guys, but you have stepped into a very slippery slope matters. And so my first comment to your question is, when you speak about the protection of something which is related to landscape and EU together in the same words, you have to think that you are speaking of something which is not a direct matter of the European Union. European Union has direct interaction with some aspects of our daily life, for example, environment, for example, agriculture, for example, nature. That's a specific competence of the European Union. Those are specific competencies of the European Union. Landscape is not. But then I will take 2 steps back, what landscape means. But let's stay on the first idea. Landscape is something which is linked to protect something which is beauty or old. As value because it's beauty, we consider beauty or we consider old. But where is the code of behavior? Where are the pieces of law written about it? They are written in specific national frameworks. Who are the special framework which are national? In Italian, maybe there are a lot of Italian. I'm sorry, I cannot double translate for the other language because my Greek and Latvian and Romanian are not at that can put me in that possibility. But when we speak of pianificazione in Italian, which is spatial framework remains a national subject and is defended by the national the rules for exploiting the land. And therefore, there's still not a unique vision under the political point of view. So, if it's clear, at least for you now, I understand that I'm an academic and and moreover, my lectures are in the last years. So I'm an academic for almost finished master and doctoral students. So I'm trying to make you understandable, so stop me if I'm making bad. I'm trying to make it simple. Think that we are dealing with something which is under a puzzle, and not complete, a difficult legal aspect. And we are talking of something which has not the same meaning in different parts of Europe. So, going back to your question, what can European Union do more for protecting what we think that should be protected? In your word here, I see that you have focused on something which is old or beauty. And I see here the influence of the Italian part, the Mediterranean part. Landscape is beauty, the beautiness of scenery. Landscape is something which is old. Okay, let's stay here, and then I will ask you to make a little effort more to understand what landscape is for maybe the Northern European citizens, which is linked to the functionality of a piece of land, something which is green, something which has many ecological function, which is a different perspective if you think as is perceived by the Italians or the French or the Spanish guy, okay? But we will do that after in the next words. So answering your first question, I can say that Europe could do better, of course, but that difficulty, that bottleneck, which we never, that gap, legal gap, we never wanted so far to fill up, makes the things more complicated. What they should do better, if you want to think about, of course, there are different actions. If you look at the activities, for example, where the European Union put the mouth, which means where they put the money. There are different, for example, projects. If you look into the direct financing actions, example is European Europe. But what I can say is that even if this is an European action about landscape, we will find different projects already financed about that. This is more a flag than an effective action, because those are small actions which have limited duration in time. With if we sometimes we speak of some million of euros per project, this is really a little. This is a drop in the ocean. So what European Union could do more, if you want my opinion, should be overtake a sort of original sin when we have been spoken about landscape officially in these buildings. If you think carefully, today we have just one piece of common documents agreed among all of us, which is the European Landscape Convention. But the European Landscape Convention is a piece of paper in which there are common agreements between all the member states and associated countries, which has been agreed under the umbrella of the Council of Europe. But the problem is that the Council of Europe is not the European Council. You have seen before Mr. Klaus presenting you the way in which the European Union works. There are well a line of competencies from the voice of European citizens, the European Parliament, through the technical body, which is the European Commission, and the voice of the national representatives, the European Councils. Listen the opinions of the Committee of the Region and the Social Economic Affair. This process is the decisional process of Europe. The Council of Europe is not part of them. Council of Europe is an umbrella of 340-something countries, which the core activity is protecting human rights and all the associated meetings. And if you want a little technical detail, sorry, in your youngness, maybe I don't want to be technical. I'm trying to, but okay, say something if I'm going too far. The consolidated Lisbon version of the treaty, which is the book of rules, the Treaty of Europe, says that something which is linked to cultural can be linked to the activity of the Council of Europe. But in this way, we have relegated, we have narrowed landscape not in technical spatial planning aspects, but only in something which is linked to the ideal work of an institution which is not part of the European Union. So what can do more the European Union do? Make the effort of bringing landscape into the official decisional process of Europe. I don't know if it will be possible, but that should be something which we would give much more power to the protective actions. I have a different example, but I took a longer time for this first action, for this first answer, because that gave me the possibility to introduce you to that. Ideas of landscape have a multifaceted, something which has more than one phase aspect, and the problem of law interpretation. Okay? You're welcome.
So the second question is, the rural landscape is an important cultural patrimony, but is disappearing from an absence of protection in the rural development plan. We are losing biodiversity in our territories, so what is the European Union doing to contribute to the preservation of Europe's natural landscapes and parks?
Okay, thank you for the question. Here we have the two steps back as I was asking to do. In the first question, you have seen that landscape is linked to something which has value for all of us because it's old or beauty or nice to see. Now we are here looking at something which the baseline meanings are linked to the functionality of the environment. We are speaking of rural development plan, and you know that in that case we are speaking of something which is rural. The second question is, after having asked you, I would like to interact with the guys. I don't know if we have time, but what landscape is, but what rural is. What's rural? This is, I'm a professor in the Faculty of Agriculture in Italy, and I have a long track of visiting professorship in the KU Leuven. And I'm asking to the students, what's rural? You are, in a few months, you will be a professional in bioengineer agricultural studies, and you have been speaking for years about rurality. What's rural? What's landscape? And now I'm asking you, what's rural? What's rural? Come on, guys. Let's give it a try. Go ahead. Sorry, come again, the second part?
Okay, it's like away from cities, more to the countryside, rural.
That's right. Good point. Far from city, but how we define far from city? That's good because many people tell me, many students tell me it's agriculture. Rural is not agriculture. Then by chance many rural places overlay with the agriculture spaces, but that's another thing. Rural, sorry, I don't have time. If any of you want to try to give me another answer, if you want to have a try, what's rural? How we define rural? We have maps of rural areas of Europe, which are used for setting up the rural development plans. How we define rural?
Maybe a place that is not much urbanized, like, because the city is totally in hands of humans, so maybe rural is less urbanized.
Almost. Which is important. That's important. For example, if you want an example, in the North American planning view, you have rural, which means far from the very city center. Sometimes you have rural places, which in our perspective are cities, dense populated cities. One doesn't like what I'm saying. Okay, anyway, probably I'm saying something that the buildings don't like to hear. So that is another important piece of knowledge to take in consideration. When we speak about rurality and when we speak about natural landscape and parks, now we are stepping into one of the second group of meanings which landscape has, which is nature, ecological functionality. Okay, that's also important. So now you know that when we speak about landscape, paesaggio, we are speaking of something which is beauty, or something which is old, or something which is ecological functional. Okay, which is green, an urban park or network of parks. I'm not much agree about the way in which the question is built, because there is no absence of protection. Maybe rural, since rural falls within agriculture, and then we enter in a territory in a playfield in which the European Union has a direct consequence, because agriculture is a direct matter of European Union. That's why you have a lot of things in rural protection when we speak about rural. So I do not agree. When you talk about rural and nature, you are in a place in which you are talking of landscape, but there you have a lot of pieces of laws that you can use. So I would not say that there's an absence. Maybe should be done more. There's a lot of lucrative appetites for the urban expansion, which has reduced the power of the rural protection initiatives. Maybe agriculture is made of people who has seen always nature protection and landscape protection as a limitation to the agricultural activities, that yes, we could do more. We won't use pesticides because otherwise all our harvest will be devastated by pests, whatever. But no, I would not speak about absence, not at all. You are in a space of direct competence of the European Union. So we have a lot of, and the same you have when you speak about natural landscapes. Maybe here in that question, to get back to the very meaning of your question, I would say that Europe have done a lot in that to have in the current most important strategies of the European Union, agriculture and nature protection. I am speaking of the Farm to Fork initiative and the nature restoration and biodiversity strategies. There you have a lot. The documents, the working documents, the documents made by the policy officers for making up the two strategies in pieces of law are plenty of sentences in which you have landscapes. So I think that in that second question, to get to a final synthetic answer, maybe the cultural part has been left a bit out. Because if you think of what I told you about the first question and the second, you see landscape which is made of cultural aspects linked to identity, to patrimony, to heritage, and the second question, you have landscape linked to the ecological functional meaning. Culture is something which is in the second doesn't leak much. So maybe if you want an answer for the second, what would be important would be improve and strengthen the voice of the rural community. If you want to speak about rural landscape and biodiversity and natural landscape and cultural aspects. For all the rest, if you think about Nature 2000 initiatives, the plenty of initiatives in the rural development plans, for the landscape, rural landscape itself and the natural landscapes, there's a lot done about the European Union. The most advanced pieces of law worldwide. There are no other geopolitical blocs who have done so much for the protection. Maybe we should raise the voice of local community for the cultural aspects, because when you speak of landscape in natural and ecological functional terms, now you have beneath the local identity. Are places where people feel to be home, the sense of place. That's something which should be done through maybe the activity of the Committee of the Region, for example. Okay. You're welcome.
So the third question is, could you share details about the European Union's approaches to fostering involvement and active participation in discussions regarding landscapes within the community?
Okay. This is a difficult question. Making a list. It's difficult to make a list. What I can do for you for that answer is being shorter than before, because I think that I have used my best shots in the two previous questions. But anyway, I can divide for you the sectors where the European Union approaches have been used to foster the involvement, participation. One is, for example, Citizens in Action and the civil dialoguing groups are two important initiatives which have been taken by the European Union in a vigorous way, especially after the bad experience of Brexit and the reason of populist wind in Europe. So listen, the voice of the communities is absolutely a key issue for the institutions, both meaning the European Parliament and the European Commission. Speaking about landscape, in this sense, different activities have been created. And, for example, something which is recent and new is the initiative which has been born under the close group of the President von der Leyen, which is the NIB, New Bauhaus Europe, New European Bauhaus, which is an initiative who has so far created different local events. There are financing actions and there are some frameworks for making the European cities more livable and give voice to the citizens. This is something which is probably one of the key initiatives, but there are so far things which were there even before. A platform which is not much known, for example, is the ESPON unit, which is not part of the European institutions, but this is that's an initiative who has in the core business to harvest evidences in the spatial planning and territorial development in Europe, making these as best practices for all. And this is maybe something which is linked to the activity of the expert, but there are actions who are financed. And I think that it's plenty in many of the direct and the indirect ways in which the European Union give voice and give money for the regional development, especially regional development. As you have seen before, the European Union is divided in region. Klaus has not developed the concept in depth, but if you think Europe is divided in countries and then in regions and then in subunits, they are called NUTS. NUTS, which is a term for, and it depends by the way in which the census, the statistics divide Europe's in practical terms. But there you have regions and the metropolitan cities. They are the two key actors in that game. And it's plenty of activities which have been activated and I think that if you want a detail, I think that the dialoguing groups, civil dialoguing groups, and the new European Bauhaus could be the two best examples. If you want to be active on that, you can do that even today. Living here, you can go on internet, look what they are, and be active the day after.
So the fourth question is, what are the main sources of financing for interventions for the protection and enhancement of landscape?
Thanks also for this question. Before answering the four questions, just a final say on the previous question. Maybe I should say that with switch off microphone. But anyway, the civil consultation, the civil dialoguing group, which means people talking about the use of lands, the use of the places where they live, is not much fostered by the local and national authorities, because the national authorities always wanted to keep a control on the land, because there's a lot of value. Every time you transform a pieces of agricultural lands, or you tear a wood down and you build a building block, you have produced a lot of money. So the people speaking about the protection of the undeveloped and unsoiled land is not much welcome many times. So this is something we should take care of when you. Okay. But anyway, going back to the four questions. Okay. When we speak about landscape, I try to introduce you to the idea where sometimes you speak of something which is old and could be something small, a single heritage element, for example, a building, or something big, like a park, like a geographical space. When you have to put the money on something which is big in special terms, in the special scale, in geographical terms, sometimes you need a lot of money. And you need a lot of power, because in large pieces of land, there are different appetites. They want to exploit for making agriculture. They want to build on because that gives a lot of money to few people. So that means that you have to have the control on that. You need a lot of power and a lot of money. So what the main sources of financing for intervention? If you do something small as a flag initiative, as a good example, there are a lot of European projects that you can find from the different programming. For example, European Horizon Europe, Interreg projects, and down up to the different that you can find. There are dedicated platforms on the website of European institutions, and that one way. Good example, less effectiveness. Normally, the effect of those actions finish the day after that the project is dead. The money are over, the project is over, the action is over. If you want more money, then you have to look, before I told you, European Union has no direct competencies on landscape. You have to look on the national initiative, privates. If you can convince Coca-Cola company to finance for your idea, why not? But another, where I would look is to do something which is linked to the idea of gather and convince people to give you money through financial instruments. When you need a lot of money for doing something, you need to look to something which could be divided in two big groups. Crowdfunding, and the North Americans and the British people, they have been very good on doing this. For example, many action in the UK and Scotland and Ireland are harsh places, difficult to live. There are no lazy governments giving you easy money as in Italy, for example. And they are very good to do that through, for example, lottery for harvesting money, through crowdfunding for making the city of Bristol greener. The second step is, aside of your ability to make crowdfunding, are banks. You have to convince some bank through different frameworks. There are a set of organizational rules for having financial instrument channeled money. And here we are in the Committee of the Region. It's plenty of action. Who's for example, the municipalities, who are the mayor, who are in chief of different metropolitan cities, they have agreed to do things. In that case, they have used their own resources and they have collected funds from private and they have used the structural funds. They have diverged the part of money who are co-financed by the European Union, all of you, together with the national money and the local money for making the famous indirect funds, the Regional Development Fund and the European Rural and Agriculture Development Fund, to give you an idea, together with the Fishery and Maritime Funds. Another unexplored by some countries as Italy, for example, which by your question it was one of the countries who has the more of the cultural heritage patrimony, for example, and done better by other countries, but let's say a new way. It goes through banks, but namely the European investment banks. There's a tendency in the dialogue about the use of direct funds and indirect funds especially, which speaks of something like a crisis. The way in which we have financed so far regional funds means that we all together put money, we give the money to the regional managing authority, and the regional managing authority divided as money in boxes, whose use has been agreed for 7 years, for example, the projectual frameworks. Those money are for new streets, those money are for public health, those money are for the protection of blah, blah, blah. Those money are used through grants, bandi in Italian, the famous bando. The public authority makes public the call, the different people who has all the characteristics for attending the grant, they participate, the winner takes the money. There's a lot of lobby. When the 7 years have expired, we make the final calculation, all the money has been spent, really good. There's a double control, the auditing from where you have some like big black lobbyist company like PricewaterhouseCoopers and blah, blah. And there's a control from here, there's an auditing, and that's finished. And this is the way in which we have spent the most of the money for the regional development, where many of the activities and the action you see in your cities, in your country, have happened. But in the last two, and especially in the 2014-2020 period, the European Union works per frameworks with a budget, frameworks with budget. Now we are in 2021-2027 period. Since the previous, we were still in Juncker Commission, so before Ursula von der Leyen. Some academics started together with people, some experts, and supporting the activity of the officers, were saying, okay, we have reached the limit, the threshold. This approach, after 45 years, is ineffective. Just to give an example, it's plenty of bad example. I'm Italian, so I take the responsibility. If you look at the amount of money given to the southern European region, because those money are allocated by indicators, less developed regions, in transition regions, and more developed regions. Italy has 4 classical less developed regions who has used a huge amount of money, a lot of money. If you look at the targets and what they harvested through those money, we had almost nothing. They were in trouble 45 years ago. They are in trouble now. They are lagging behind. So someone starting to say, okay, this is not working anymore. We have to change, especially because we have to give money to the common European defense, €1 trillion. So agriculture can be anymore the more finance part of the European budget. We cannot keep going on money to the region who build the next road which goes rotten, or the next rebuilt village after an earthquake that in 25 years will be abandoned and destroyed. We have to find another way. The European Bank of Investments now has an advisory hub. There are financial instruments dedicated. In that case, means that we should start thinking if we need to do something big, we have to think carefully between us. We have to reach an agreement between the communities, regardless of the boundaries. It doesn't matter if they are two different regions. We need to fill a gap, so we have to focus resources, thematic concentration, finance concentration, let to go outside, look for the money. Don't wait for the regional bundle, for the regional grant. Look for a loan. If the idea is good, you can convince some investor. And for doing that, the European Investment Bank, committed with the European Commission, is helping the territory for investments where you need a lot of money. And this is where you can find answer to your question.
What steps does the European Parliament take to confront urbanization's effects on landscapes and green spaces in European cities?
That's something you should ask the European Parliament. Okay. Once again, as you have understand from my long answers to your questions, the urbanization effects on landscape, which means soil sealing, which means there is a mechanism who has been very active in the first decades after the Second World War, meaning after the Marshall Plan, in which the mechanism of transforming agricultural land in something which was urbanized area was a mechanism who had been hyperactive in Europe. Europe is dense. If you think Europe in terms of, if you look at a map and you look at the United States, or China or Canada, Europe is small, dense of people. That density, for example, here we are in Brussels, they speak, the Flemish part of Belgians, they speak about the Flemish diamond, is one of the most urbanized pieces of land in the world. And that mechanism is creating a lot of issues, and now as many times in the human history, what we had was a suddenly stop. Now the tendency is to not anymore a single square meter. For example, here, in such a dense Flemish diamond, they are very good to build over building. So they destroyed and build again. Other countries, for example, Italy, Greece, Spain, had a problem to stop until the figures, the plots, the graphs, were showing that we have over-consumed the land. But the European Parliament can make the voice of European citizens be heard, but as I told you, the planning frameworks remain a national decision. So I would make the same question to the people for the European Parliament. They have a list of things they have done, of actions, but since the planning is not a matter of competencies of the European Union, that's not an easy task. I'm not updated about that, but if we speak about urbanization of green spaces, we speak of soil sealing. I put a layer of concrete over green lands. And I think that we are still stuck at the European Union level to a communication on soil sealing, which has been led by an Italian policy officer with a group of people. Over this communication, other countries have been active national answer. For example, Italy now has one of the more restrictive laws on soil sealing. And so what can the European Parliament do is keep going on, putting pressure on the different national authorities, and using all the means they have, working through the sectors in which they have competence. For example, environment. So they're not going directly working on the spatial framework, but for example, putting limits, and there they do have the competence on the find the positive reaction of citizens, but they have a lot of enemy when we're speaking about lobbies, when we speak about representative of agriculture groups, industrial groups. So it's not an easy game. But anyway, this should be done. Another action, an important action would the European Parliament would do, and I tell you this because it's been part of a projector activity we had together with Antonello. There's an umbrella for European. I was mentioning you the European Landscape Convention. This chart, this piece of paper in which we agreed, which is out of the game, but anyway is there. There's an umbrella of academics, which is a representative of a network of universities in Europe who had supported the born of the chart, and now they are still active. Ancona is one of the node of the chart. There are Greek representatives. There are all over Europe. And on that project, together with the Green in the European Parliament, with the Greens, the European Greens, we had a project discussing this matter that I have introduced to you. And one aspect which has been reasoned by especially by the Greens, is this, and I leave you as a conclusive message, and that's something in which European Parliament do a lot. If you think we went through, I'm old enough to remember easier and lazier times before. Now you are in your young age, you have already seen economic crisis, subprime crisis, wars, and pandemics. I've never seen a pandemic before when I was at your age. In response to those crises, a lot of money have been put in game. I was saying before, and important, if you think carefully, you know that the divide between Northern, the pigs concept, no? The Northern European hyper-performance of the budget, well-maintained budget of the Netherlands people or the Austrian people, and the lazy Mediterranean who spends like hell without looking at the future. To face the crisis, we have done a miracle. We have convinced the Northern European people to merge part of their public debt together with us. That has created an enormous quantity of money that our Italian fellows know as PNRR, which is InvestEU. InvestEU has trillions of euros. And the concern of Greens about getting back to your question is all those money without control in a situation in which the special framework are national and not controlled by the European Union, can create a negative greenwashing of the money. That's something which I think European Parliament should take the focus on the next European Parliament, which will be created after the election, which we will be held in June.